What's up, Patreon subscribers? Happy Thursday to you. Couple of things. One, I'm gonna be unavailable for Skype and telephone consultations today and tomorrow because I'm actually going to go out of town in a couple hours. So I won't be available for Skype or telephone consultations today and tomorrow, but I will be available again for a few hours on Saturday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week for if you're a $20 subscriber or a $50 subscriber. Speaking of $20 and $50 subscribers, I had a couple guys ask me about the possibility of purchasing extra time. I haven't made a definite decision on that because normally I don't allow that. But if I do, more than likely, I'm going to make extra time available for somewhere between $1 and $1.50 per minute. $1 and $1.50 per minute. So, for example, if you're a $50 subscriber, you get 60 minutes worth of Skype and or telephone consultation time per month. If you're a $20 subscriber, you get up to 20 minutes of Skype and or telephone consultation time per month. I've had at least two $50 subscribers ask me about the possibility of purchasing extra time if needed. And I've had one $20 subscriber ask me about, well, with $20, if you regularly need extra consultation time, you need to just upgrade to a $50 subscriber. If you regularly feel like you're going to need extra. But if it's like only every blue moon, then what 90% chance, again, it's not definite, but 90% chance what I will do is I will charge you somewhere between $1 to $1.50 per minute for each additional minute that you want. So I don't have my calculator in front of me, but I don't know what $1.50 times 30. I think that would be what, $45? Yeah. So yeah, let's say you want an additional 30 minutes of time in a month. At a rate of $1.50, that would be $45. You would have to pay $45 for an extra 30 minutes if I was to go with the rate of $1.50 per minute. Yeah, you would be paying $45 for an extra 30 minutes. So I'll keep you posted on that. Within the next few days or the next week or two, I'll keep you posted on availability to buy extra time. What else related to announcements? I already told you I won't be available today and tomorrow. Available time. Oh, I had somebody ask me, is it possible for Patreon subscribers to suggest content for my Patreon exclusive videos? For that, I would say, of course. Whether it's a specific question or a specific issue or topic, yeah, I'm always open for suggestions that are tailored to your needs for my Patreon exclusive content. So yeah, if there's a specific question you want answered, a specific scenario you want me to, assess and evaluate and explain, or just some other topic that would be related, directly or indirectly related to the contents of one or more of my books, by all means, you can either post it publicly or you can send me a private message with a suggestion for a future Patreon exclusive video. The only topic right now I would say is off limits, if at least one, would be conversational hypnosis. I've had a lot of guys ask me about, Alan, can you do a video teaching conversational hypnosis? I don't cover conversational hypnosis generally on live streams. I don't cover it on Patreon exclusive videos. And I don't even cover it on Skype or telephone consultations. That's something I only usually cover in a one-on-one face-to-face coaching session. In a one-on-one face-to-face coaching session is things to do with conversational hypnosis. Yeah. So that's the one topic, because I've had quite a few guys ask me, request that I do a video. That's one subject. I only do that when I'm working with somebody face to face, in person, is when I cover the topic of conversational hypnosis. Otherwise, I don't do it over the telephone or on video, none of that. I do that. That's something I help guys with face to face. Okay. Now, if you watch my last two videos, YouTube videos, on Tuesday and yesterday, which was regarding both videos had to do with the concept of a Mode 3 pump and dump and Mode 2 pump and dump. And I got a lot of feedback on both videos. But as I think I mentioned in one of those two videos, and I've always had this by a few guys, in the last 24 to 48 hours, I've had quite a few guys basically give me feedback along the lines of, Alan, I totally understand why you and many guys are against exhibiting Mode 3 behavior. Because it's blatantly dishonest, it's blatantly misleading and manipulative, it's cowardly, and it's unethical. And more than likely, it's not going to produce any desirable results. So I can totally understand your harsh criticisms against various aspects of Mode 3 behavior. But at the same time, a lot of these guys said, but with all due respect, Alan, I don't know if I'm totally understanding of the drawbacks of Mode 2 behavior. I understand why you don't recommend Mode 3 at all, but I'm not in full comprehension of why you are so harshly against Mode 2 behavior. Because even if you were to argue that Mode 2 is not quite as effective as Mode 1, it doesn't seem all that bad. You know, Mode 2 doesn't seem all that bad. So what's your main criticisms of Mode 2 behavior? And honestly, I've had this, hold on one second. I've had this argument from a lot of guys starting with the 1990s. I know as far back as, probably the 1990s. I've had close friends and acquaintances try to argue in favor of Mode 2 versus Mode 1. Because a lot of guys feel like the number one guys who tend to favor Mode 2 are guys who feel like Mode 1 is just too blunt, too forward. Some men have argued that they think is disrespectful and socially inappropriate, and that Mode 2, if nothing else, will reduce your chances of a very negative reaction from a woman, and is generally considered more socially acceptable and socially appropriate than Mode 1 behavior. And as I say in my book, if you've read it or listened to the audiobook, Mode 2 is actually of the four modes of verbal communication, Mode 2 is the verbal communication style that I would say is probably the most utilized by the vast majority of heterosexual men. Man, that's the most utilized. So, yeah, a lot of guys aren't in favor of mode 2. Like, I had a guy who's been a long-term client of mine that even wrote me and said something to the effect of, Alan, I don't see what's so wrong with mode 2. Like, even though I still endorse mode 1, what's so wrong with mode 2? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an assessment of mode 2 by archetype, my 5 archetypes, which of course are reciprocator, rejector, wholesome pretender, erotic hypocrite, and manipulative time waster. I'm going to give you an assessment based on those 5 archetypes. Hold on, excuse me. Okay. I'm going to start with the reciprocator and assess the difference in the responses and or results you will receive from a mode 1 approach versus a mode 2 approach. Reciprocator. What will happen when you exhibit mode 1 versus mode 2 behavior with a reciprocator? Well, when you're mode 1 with the reciprocator, the benefit of being mode 1 is that you'll be able to identify a woman who is a reciprocator usually within the first 5 minutes of your very first conversation, and I would say at the latest at the 10-minute mark of your very first conversation with a woman. It will usually not take you more than 10 minutes within a conversation to identify a reciprocator. In contrast, when you exhibit mode 2 behavior, it's going to take you on average at least minimum 20 to 30 minutes before you'll be able to identify a woman who is a reciprocator. And a lot of times, it will take you 2 to 3 conversations before you're able to identify a reciprocator. And the main reason why is because when you're mode 2, part of being mode 2 means you're going to engage in lengthy, flattering, entertaining, overly cautious, overly polite, vague and ambiguous small talk and fluff talk and chit chat. That's an automatic side byproduct of mode 2 behavior. Whenever you're mode 2, you're just inevitably going to engage. Minimum, you're going to usually engage in about 10 to 15 minutes of flattering, entertaining, polite, cautious, small talk. Why? Because when you're mode 2, the number one thing mode 2 behavior is predicated on is a fear of being too blunt, a fear of being too provocative, a fear of being antagonistic, a fear of being confrontational, a fear of upsetting a woman's social programming or cultural conditioning, and in addition, or sexual sensibilities. That's what mode 2 is predicated on. So, as a consequence, you're going to always, when you're mode 2, you're going to always end up engaging in some degree, again, of flattering, entertaining, trivial, polite, cautious, vague and ambiguous, small talk, fluff talk, chit chat, which is going to delay your ability to identify a reciprocator. You'll be able to identify, which is the good news, but it's going to be a slower process than it would be if you were mode 1. So when it comes to reciprocators, that's the downside of mode 2 versus mode 1, is that you'll be able to identify a reciprocator, but it's going to take you longer. I know that from my own personal experiences and from the experiences of a lot of my clients and friends and acquaintances. When you're mode 2, when you interact with a reciprocator, it's going to take you longer. I say bare minimum, it's probably going to take you about 15 to 20 minutes longer to identify a reciprocator when you're mode 2 than when you're mode 1. That's minimum. But in some cases, it's going to take you hours longer, days longer, weeks longer when you're mode 2. Yeah, it's going to take you, in many cases, hours longer, days longer, and even sometimes weeks longer when you're mode 2 compared to... when you're mode 1, you'll be able to identify a reciprocator within the first 5 to 10 minutes of your very first conversation. I have all the time. Similarly, rejector. What's the difference in mode 1 versus mode 2 behavior when it comes to identifying a rejector? When you're mode 1 with a woman, you'll generally be able to identify a woman who is a rejector within the first 5 minutes of your very first conversation with a woman. It won't take you long. Sometimes I've been able to identify a rejector within the first 30 to 90 seconds of my very first conversation with a woman. At minimum, I'd say about roughly 5 minutes. When you're mode 1, you'll be able to identify a rejector at no more than later than the 5-minute mark. When you exhibit mode 2 behavior, it's going to take you on average a minimum of about 20 to 30 minutes before you identify a rejector. Yeah, most times it's going to take you about 20 to 30 minutes before you identify a rejector. Sometimes it's going to take you hours, days, or even weeks before you're able to identify a rejector when you're mode 2. And the reason why is what I'll explain with the reciprocator. The reason why it takes you so long when you're mode 2 is because you have to always keep in mind what mode 2 is predicated on. Mode 2 is designed to avoid negative reactions, to prevent and avoid negative reactions, harsh criticisms, personal insults, and confrontational type social interactions. That's what mode 2 is designed to do. So, in more simple terms, when you're mode 2 with women, a lot of times you don't really give them anything to reject. You don't really give them anything to reject until later on in your conversations. See, a woman's not going to reject you. Most of the time, a woman's not going to reject you if you don't give them anything to reject. For example, I give you some example. Let's say you approach a woman and you spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of the conversation talking about the weather and what's going on in the world and how your day is going and all that stuff. What does a woman have to reject? What does a woman have to reject? You haven't invited her to do anything. A woman's not going to reject you until you invite her to share your company in a romantic manner or a strictly sexual manner. That's the moment when a woman is going to reject you, is when you get to the point where you're specifically inviting her to share your company in a romantic manner or a strictly sexual manner. And see, with mode 2, you're never going to get to the point in asking a woman to share your company in a romantic or strictly sexual manner. Because if you were to get to the point, you wouldn't be mode 2. You would be mode 1. You would be mode 1. See, with mode 2, you're going to always first engage women in some degree of flattering, entertaining, trivial, polite, cautious, vague and ambiguous small talk before you lay your desires, interests, and intentions on the table. So that's rejector. And here, the next 3 archetypes is when I would say mode 2 becomes even more challenging, starting with the wholesome pretender. When you interact with a wholesome pretender and you're mode 1, you'll be able to both identify and ultimately seduce a woman who is a wholesome pretender type as quickly as within the first 20 to 30 minutes after you make their acquaintance. As you know from some of my verbal seduction stories, man, I've seduced wholesome pretender types as quickly as the first 15 to 20 minutes after I met them. I would say at least one or two cases as quickly as within the first 10 minutes after I met them. Like, for example, if you remember my grocery store story, I actually, that happened in June of 1986, I actually seduced a woman into sucking my dick that I met in a grocery store. I seduced her probably within roughly about 10 minutes after I first started talking to her. She was a wholesome pretender. I seduced her in about 10 minutes. When you're exhibiting mode 2 behavior, you're going to have a very challenging time identifying sexually duplicitous women. They're going to have a very challenging time. For one reason, because when you're mode 2, essentially, you're being sexually duplicitous yourself. If you've been a long-time follower of mine, one thing you've heard me say is, it's hard to identify when a woman's being full of shit when you're being full of shit yourself. It's hard to identify when a woman's being a combination of disingenuous and duplicitous if you're being disingenuous and duplicitous yourself. Yeah, when you're mode 2, your verbal communication style is going to be too vague and ambiguous and too polite and cautious to challenge a woman's social programming, her cultural conditioning, and her sexual sensibilities. In other words, in real simple terms, when you're mode 2 with a wholesome pretender, you're going to come across as too much of a pleasant, polite, nice guy. That's going to be usually the end result when you're mode 2 with a wholesome pretender. A wholesome pretender, she's not going to look at you as being bold enough, provocative enough, and alpha enough to really seduce her and get her pussy wet. She's going to more so look at you as a nice guy, or at least a guy who's pretending to be a nice guy. One of the two. She's either going to look at you as a nice guy or a disingenuous manipulator who's pretending to be a nice guy. One of the two. And either one is going to work to your disadvantage more than your advantage when you're dealing with a wholesome pretender. So that's why mode 2 is never, when it comes to wholesome pretenders, mode 2 is never, ever, ever going to be as effective as mode 1. Ever. Ever. Nah. Now, at least with a reciprocator, if mode 1 is this level of effectiveness, mode 2 might not be far behind when it comes to dealing with a reciprocator. But when you're dealing with a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite, when you're dealing with sexually duplicitous women, mode 1 is here, mode 2 is way down here. Yeah, mode 2 is never going to be as effective when it comes to identifying and seducing wholesome pretenders as mode 1 behavior is. Similarly, the erotic hypocrite. Similarly, as you know, an erotic hypocrite is actually similar to a wholesome pretender. Basically, an erotic hypocrite is a more pretentious, a more materialistic, and a more antagonistic and argumentative version of a wholesome pretender. That's what an erotic hypocrite is. Erotic hypocrite is a more pretentious, a more money-oriented and status-oriented and antagonistic and argumentative variation of a wholesome pretender. When you approach an erotic hypocrite using mode 1 behavior, similar to a wholesome pretender, you can identify and seduce an erotic hypocrite sometimes as quickly as within the first 20 to 30 minutes after you meet them, after you first make their acquaintance. Man, sometimes it might take a little longer than that, but a lot of times, yeah, I've seduced erotic hypocrites as quickly as within the first 20 to 30 minutes after I met them. When you exhibit mode 2 behavior, it's almost the same similar assessment as I just gave for the wholesome pretender. When you're mode 2, you're going to have a very challenging, if not flat out next to impossible, ability to identify erotic hypocrites for the simple fact that your conversation style is going to be way too flattering, way too entertaining, way too cautious and polite, way too vague and ambiguous. It's just simply not going to be bold enough, provocative enough, or sexually explicit enough to really challenge a woman's social programming, her cultural conditioning, and her overall sexual sensibilities. In other words, again, similar to my assessment for the wholesome pretender, when you're mode 2 with an erotic hypocrite, she's going to look at you as a beta male. In real simple terms, she's going to end up looking at you as a beta male. She's not going to look at you as an alpha male. Plain and simple. I can guarantee you that. When you're mode 2 with an erotic hypocrite, you're never going to come across as an alpha male in the eyes of an erotic hypocrite. She's going to look at you as an easy to manipulate, easy to control and influence beta male. The only way you're going to end up getting her in bed is going to be to either resort to tricking or whining and dining. That's the only way. If you're mode 2 or mode 3, you're going to be able to get an erotic hypocrite in bed, is if you resort to tricking or whining and dining. But you're not, if you're mode 2 or mode 3 with an erotic hypocrite, I guarantee you're not going to be able to get a woman like that in bed for free. Mode 1 is the only way to get an erotic hypocrite in bed for free without spending any money on them. But yeah, if you're mode 2 or mode 3, you're going to end up having to spend money on an erotic hypocrite to get her in bed. That's the only way you're going to get her in bed. And then here's probably, of the 5 archetypes, here's the biggest one of them all, is the manipulative time waster. The manipulative time waster. When you're mode 1 with a manipulative time waster, you'll be able to identify them, I would say, usually at no later than the 10-minute mark of your very first conversation with them. I said absolute maximum, the 15-minute mark of your very first conversation with them. When you're dealing with a manipulative time waster. Yeah, when you're dealing with a manipulative time waster and you're mode 1, you'll be able to identify manipulative time wasters somewhere between the 10 and 15-minute mark of your very first conversation, if not sooner than that. When you're mode 2 with a manipulative time waster, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time. This is the main reason why I personally moved away from mode 2 behavior and started exhibiting mode 1 behavior, was not so much so I can quickly identify reciprocators or wholesome pretenders or erotic hypocrites, but of the 5 archetypes, the main reason why I moved from mode 2 to mode 1 is that it allowed me to very quickly identify manipulative time waster types. Yeah, man, when you're mode 2, man, it's going to take you, most of the time, you're not even going to be able to identify. Because, see, manipulative time wasters are women who know how to do a very good job of giving you the misleading impression that they are a reciprocator or on the verge of becoming a reciprocator. That's what good manipulative time wasters do. They know how to give men the very believable and convincing and misleading impression that they either are a reciprocator or are on the verge of being a reciprocator, when in reality, they're really a rejecter who's just looking to exploit you for your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship, and exploit you for your financial resources and material possessions. So yeah, because of the fact that when you're mode 2, your conversation style is way too flattering, way too entertaining, way too cautious and polite, way too vague and ambiguous, you're just simply not bold enough, not authentic enough. You're not real and authentic enough. You're not provocative and explicit enough to identify a manipulative time waster. And I guarantee you, when you're mode 2 with women on a regular basis, on the positive end, you might get your share of pussy. Like when I used to be, when I was mode 2 a few times with women in my younger years, I got laid from time to time. But the biggest problem was, man, I ended up having a lot of social interactions with manipulative time wasters that would cause me to waste a lot of time, and in some cases, both time and money. That's I would say that's arguably the biggest detriment against mode 2 behavior versus mode 1, is that you're going to end up wasting a lot of time, and in many cases, both time and money, with women who are seasoned, savvy, manipulative time waster types. Keep that in mind. All right, fellas. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I might come back with a video on Saturday, and if not Saturday, at the latest, next Monday. Take care.